Good morning, Twin Cities, and welcome to Reckoning with Real Estate, a show about the American dream and building a better real estate company. I'm Paige Kale with the Real Estate Collaborative, and today we're joined by Bob Lux, the founder and principal of LIHTC, a development company, and we're going to be talking about a development that his company did in St. Paul on Lexington Avenue. And we'll start off. Bob is founded LIHTC in 2005, serves as its principal, and as the company's founder, Bob serves as the visionary behind LIHTC's projects. He has been in the real estate development and investment business for over 35 years and has been involved in numerous housing, office, and industrial projects throughout the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And part of why we have Bob today here is, the Real Estate Collaborative, we are residential housing sales, but we also work in the housing justice space. And Bob does a lot of work in the housing justice space as well, trying to bring affordable housing to our communities and to people who need housing. And the 9 is a really, really unique development that we'll get to in a moment. But Bob, why don't you say hello to everyone and maybe give a little bit more background on you and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Well, good morning, everybody. And Paige, I really appreciate you reaching out to me and inviting me on your show. My only regret right now is that I'm not like a podcast aficionado where I don't watch Joe Rogan or any of those folks that everybody talks about. So this is new. So I haven't been in front of a microphone, and I'm enjoying this. So
well, thank you for being willing to do something new.
This will be fun. Yeah. So, well, the question is how did I end up in the seat that I'm at with LIHTC and doing housing projects So I'm originally from Minnesota. I grew up in a little town in central Minnesota of Long Prairie. It's a little town of 2,500 at the time, and it's now 3,700. It was actually featured yesterday in the Star Tribune in an article about the housing shortage in Long Prairie. And I was just in Long Prairie this past weekend for my class reunion. So I got a chance to spend time walking around this town. And I'd left Long Prairie in the 1975 when I'd graduated from high school, went to college at Hamlin in St. Paul, not too far from where the 9 is located, the project that we're going to talk about, and then finished over at the University of Minnesota. But when I finished, my mother had passed away. So my dad was in the hardware and furniture store business in Long Prairie. So I actually went back to Long Prairie to spend time with him, thought that it was just going to be a summer. And I ended up going out to lunch with a banker he was kind of a second generation guy that was taking over the bank. And he goes, the lumberyard's for sale. And I said, well, what does that have to do with me? And he said, well, you and your dad should buy the lumberyard. And I said, well, I don't have any money. I can't do that. And he goes, well, I'll loan you the money. And 5 years later, I was building homes and farm buildings and all sorts of stuff. We had a really kind of a thriving operation. But I realized I was in Long Prairie. My girlfriend at the time was from Minneapolis, and my social life was in Minneapolis, and I really had different aspirations. So I sold the lumberyard to my manager. And at that point, or sometime shortly before that, I realized the only reason the banker did that is he wanted the lumberyard to be operational so he could make loans, to people that were building homes. I was his shill basically to create housing and to create stuff. So I came down to the cities and went to work for a group by the name of Dominium, was now the largest or one of the largest multifamily affordable housing developers in the country. And at the time, there was literally 4 of us that were in the development side. It was the 2 founders and another guy and myself, and everybody else was in the management side. But I loved the space, and there wasn't LIHTC at that point, low income housing tax credits or anything like that, but there were tax exempt bonds. And so I whipped off, in a period of 3 years, I whipped off 3 very large projects. One in St. Louis Park was called Newport-on-7 at the time, was 167 units, and one out in Egan, which was called Thomas Lake Point, which was 212 units. And then I did a larger one that was about just over 400 units in what was then deemed prestigious West Bloomington. So it was in Bloomington. And it was a deal that was broken, but these were all bond deals. And so I really learned that. And I learned that I loved the business. I loved creating housing, and I had a knack for it. And it was just good. And then I got pulled away from Dominium by a group called Trammell Crow, which was Trammell at the time was the largest multifamily developer in the country, actually in the world at that point, and to run their Minneapolis office. And I was 28 to 30 years old. I mean, it was very young, so it was really an honor. And I moved into that space and spent 3 years doing that. And then the market was bad, so we actually shut down the office, and I went on my own with another guy, and we just started buying industrial buildings and office buildings and a lot of stuff actually around where we're located here in Eden Prairie right now. So it's been a fascinating career. I've built thousands of units around town from, my involvement with those 3 projects, but then really the Carlisle downtown, people probably know that, the 39-story condo tower for the people in the for sale side, and Grant Park on the south side of downtown Minneapolis. And then just a plethora of apartment deals. Yeah. But through all of that, I've, as these projects have gotten larger, the capital requirements have really become more challenging. And, the typical projects that we do are from 80 to 150 million. And we like to kind of reduce the amount of debt on them. So we got to maximize the debt at 65 or 70%. So the equity checks are really large. So for the last 10 years, I basically have been working with private equity firms. And private equity firms, when I first started with them, were really pretty reasonable about their returns that they wanted. Well, over the last years, that has become really a challenge. Private equity, really looks for 2x on their money. So if they put in 20 million, they want 40 million back.
Holy moly.
I know. And and that's, so you've got to do it quickly. You've got to, it's all on internal rate of return. So it's time value of money. So you want to get in, build them, and then get them stabilized and get them sold, maximize the price. Yeah. And then get the private equity firms out of it. Well, over the last 5 years, I've started to realize that doesn't mix well with my ethos, where housing is really, it should be a right. And it's a little bit like healthcare in a lot of our feelings. And when your motivation is to get the highest rent increases that you can, because you're trying to maximize the values, you can't really do that. So there's a mix-mash. So what I started doing is I've started over 3 or 4 years, well, actually 5 years ago, started looking for other avenues for capitalizing larger projects. And there was a federal program called Opportunity Zones. So we did a couple of deals in Opportunity Zones, and that helped because it was still basically private equity money, but their yield requirements were less. Okay. Because they got other benefits. And then there was LIHTC, which is low income housing tax credits, which, a lot of the market might know about those. I did one of those, which we kind of overbuilt it. It's a beautiful project. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go on here. And then I did a large project, the one that we're talking about in St. Paul, which is called the 9 at Lexington Station. It's right off of Interstate 94 at Lexington, just north of Lexington, right at one of the light rail stations before University. And what I found is we've got to find a way to build in these communities that need it, and without LIHTC, without a lot of regulations. So that's what we're doing now. And I still love doing bigger projects, but that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that you kind of started off earlier in your career kind of doing affordable housing. Is that with Dominion?
Well, Dominion at the time, they weren't really deemed, we were doing affordable, but it wasn't really deeply affordable. It's not like what Dominion does now.
And what is needed now.
Which is needed now. It was under the old, they were called housing revenue bonds.
Okay.
You would, 20% of your units had to be at 80% of median income.
Yeah.
And our median income in our metro area has always been somewhat high. So 80% is not really, that's just normal market rate rent for the most part. So, and they did do away with that program in the late 80s. Newt Gingrich, I remember him voting on it. I'm like going, oh man, life is going to change now. But so, and it did. But that was when Dominion then pivoted after I left and started doing LIHTC projects, which
kind of
they really
affordable.
And they really created a market.
Yeah, and another thing I'm struck by when you're talking about all of this, a lot of it is about the financing and the money. And one thing we talk about a lot at the Real Estate Collaborative, because we're obviously, residential real estate. I mean, there's a lot of money in that, and, people profit from it greatly. But the whole profiting from a basic need, the commodification of housing, basically.
Yep.
And what happens when you commodify a basic need is what we're living through right now, is more and more people are either homeless, unhoused, or they're paying way more than they should towards their housing because they have to. So it is interesting. It's all very layered, and
you're nailing it. It's you're drilling right in on where the problem is how do we do that, and and still keep capitalism as the primary driver. And what we're going to talk about today is what I'm trying to do in my little shop to have an impact on that.
Yeah. And I love that, because in our world today, probably in any world, but it's really a matter of focusing on what we can in our little corner of the world to make it a better place. So we're going to head into break, and on the other side, we'll come back and we'll dig a little deeper on the nines. I'm really excited to hear about the project, and we'll introduce it a little bit further on the other side of the break. This is Reckoning with Real Estate, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Crashing through these walls, you take my breath away. Oh, wrecking ball, you steal the show.
Welcome back to the second part of Reckoning with Real Estate. I'm Paige Kale, and I'm here with Bob Lux from LIHTC. And we're going to talk a little bit about his newest project that he and his team developed in St. Paul, the 9 at Lexington Station. Before we do, the first half of the show, we talked a lot about, Bob introduced himself and talked a lot about his history with housing and building housing, and kind of just how expensive it's gotten and what a kind of challenge it is to build deeply affordable housing, the housing that a lot of folks need, because it's just so expensive. And the typical model is, you mentioned it, low income housing tax credits. That's, I would say, for the past 3 or 4 decades, that's been the primary way to deliver deeply affordable housing. Is that fair?
I really only probably 20 to 30 years, not that far back.
Okay. And what is really interesting about the 9 is, and I'm just going to read a little bit, just a brief description of the 9. It's a middle income building with half of its 304 apartments restricted to residents earning 60% of the area median income or less. And this housing development, I refer to it as a unicorn in the affordable housing space, because it was built with only a special tax classification from the city of St. Paul, and there were no other typical subsidies that were involved. And that's all I know about it. So I'm curious just to hear how it all came about and how you managed to get some pretty good affordable apartments without a ton of subsidies.
Well, you described it very correctly, and it is a unicorn. And it's the first larger project like this that has been done in our metro. So it's 152 units, affordable at 60% of AMIs, area median income. And that group of people, we talked about the housing bond program before that was at 80%. That's not really all that affordable. When you get down to 60s, the LIHTC actually does target at 60s. They do 50s and 60s are really the two levels of affordability that they're going for. But what we were able to do with this project is somewhat over amenitize it. We ended up acting as our own general contractor on the project because the contractor passed away and I had to get the building completed. So I ended up buying the contractor and finishing the project. But so we built it for a good number. About half of the subcontractors on the project were union labor, half were not. So it was a mixed shop. So we didn't take any subsidies, no tax increment from the city, nothing from the Met Council. The only actual subsidy was the 4D tax treatment, which applies to those 50% of the units that are at 60% or lower. Those units get about a 70 to 75% reduction in their property taxes. So they still pay property taxes, but the only reduction, the 152 units pay market rate on the property taxes. So there's no subsidy on those at all.
Okay.
And the beauty of what we created, I think, is the collection of the resident that we have living there. So you have people, and so we had to somewhat over improve the quality of the product. And Paige, your audience doesn't know this, but we're giving you and your team tomorrow a tour of the building, so you'll see it firsthand. But to get market rate residents, somebody that is whether or not they're an accountant or a doctor or a whatever that needs teacher,
nurse,
to live with an affordable person, you've got to give them some incentives. And the incentive is you over amenitize it so that they walk in and they feel proud. And we don't really stress that half of the building is affordable. We just say there's affordable, and people actually. A lot of people really like that they want to be integrated within our community. They don't want to be, that I live in the, the hotsy-totsy building over on one side and the, all the poor people have to live somewhere else.
It's a very European model.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. And we opened it in January, and we're right now, as of last weekend, we're 80% leased.
Right.
We'll be full by mid-November. So in the apartment business, you always want to fill them in 11 months because if you go over 11 months, then you're into renewals and then you're kind of competing with yourself. So it's going beautifully. But the beauty of it is you walk around that building and it's a big building. I mean, 300 units. We can't solve housing in 100 unit buildings. We've got to solve housing in 250 to 350 unit buildings. And if we had a lot of time, I'd tell you the reasoning why those are kind of the magic numbers. But if we do like this project, a 300 unit building, you walk around it and you see this diverse group of people, and it's a neighborhood all within that, and they're getting along. Delinquency is like almost zero.
Oh, that's
because
great.
if a person at a lower median income moves in, they're loving it. And the gym is great. We've got a golf simulator. We've got like 30 work from home suites that are just
I saw
out.
those online.
Oh my God,
cool.
they're decked out like crazy. The lobby feels like you're in a fine hotel. Yeah. And we've got delivery service within the building so that all the Amazon deliveries are kind of in the back of the house. So and then you get notified. So we've got all the technology is like the best that there is. In addition to that, it's a really sustainable building. We've got an $800,000 solar array on the roof of that building, which was done before they took all the solar credits away, which are not possible anymore. I mean,
Right.
that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, we could have 30 discussions here
Yeah.
off of just this one topic, but it's really interesting because I think it's healthy for the quality of the people that we have getting in that building. Just a case in point, I was over at the building the other day, and there was a gentleman that was trying to get into the package delivery room, and his app on his phone wasn't scanning correctly. And I said, well, let me help you. And he was an older guy, and I was looking at it, and the screen on his phone wasn't in very good condition. So the scanner wasn't working. So I got him in, and I asked him, I said, well, how do you like living here? And he goes, God, I just love it. Are you kidding? And he goes, where I came from, he goes, there was homeless people in the hallways that I walk over. And I'm like, I'm looking in this beautiful environment that this man, the dignity that he is now living in. And it helps him be successful in life. So my big push right now is, how do we do a lot of these?
Yeah.
And so we're actually pivoting our whole organization to working with a large publicly rated, an S&P rated nonprofit group.
And is that how this got built?
No, this one that's a good question. This one got built through a large private equity firm, one of the largest, that has an impact fund.
Okay.
And
this was their do-good
This is their do-good piece.
Okay.
And we were able to convince them to do good with us.
Gotcha.
And they loved it. They now are like, it's a poster child for them, but they can't. They can do like one of these. This doesn't give them the yield that they need.
And we need a lot more than one of them, to your point.
No, we need literally, in the state of Minnesota, if you ask ChatGPT what the housing deficit is, it's like 100,000 units.
It is, yes.
And
it's growing year over year. Because we can't get housing built.
And our unemployment rate is, I just got the stats last night, are 3.6%. Nationally, it's 4.5%. Our job growth just came in. Job growth is great. If we don't get government kind of out of the housing business and get, just really good, high quality people into it, we've got a problem.
Well, what meeting I was at a couple of weeks ago, I won't say it specifically, but I know there was a big push of, sustainability and prevailing wages to get housing built. And I think they were thinking on the back end, well, they were, because they said it, we'll just get a whole bunch of subsidies to get the affordability. And there are not enough subsidies in the world to create the housing that we need. We have to figure out how to do it differently. So I so appreciate that you're leading the fight. You're trying to figure out how to do it differently.
Well, Paige, you're helping because you understand it. And the reality is a lot of the governments are broke.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the tax rate increases for the major metro to Minneapolis and St. Paul, their real estate tax increases that they're asking, their levy increases, it is unfathomable what's going on.
Yeah.
And when you look at Hennepin County and Ramsey County, their operating budgets, they're all they're subsidized somewhat by the federal government. Well, the federal government is not subsidizing anymore, and quite honestly, they can't afford it. And we won't get into the politics of it, but they can't afford it. And ultimately, with the debt that they're carrying, we've got to find a different way. So I really appreciate you listening to this. But I believe the way is more mission-driven, 501c3 nonprofit pairing with a developer that really knows how to build at scale.
Yeah. And did you say that the nines, I believe in one of our previous conversations, some of the apartments are reserved for Section 8 folks as well?
Not reserved. We accept Section 8.
I see.
And so we've got, I don't know how many, somewhere between 2 and 6 Section 8 vouchers in there.
Okay.
And that works out fine.
Yeah.
I mean, but they're not. And when we distinguish between the affordable and non, they're all, it's the whole buildings, so it's not like over here and over there. We want this to be a community for people.
I really appreciated your point. I live in a building that's very diverse in terms of income, in terms of yellow people, brown people, purple people, pink people. And it's the first time in a really, really long time that I've lived in a really diverse environment. You know, I've lived in pretty white neighborhoods.
Yep.
And I've got to say, I kind of love it. And I do believe that if we're going to get back on track in this country, we kind of need to live, if not together, we need to like talk together and like be around people that don't look like us.
You're spot on. You are, and everybody that is close to what we're doing over in St. Paul, we've taken a lot of the city folks through, and the feedback that we got was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So it's like they can't stop talking about it.
I'm excited to see it tomorrow. And we are about to run out of time, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming in and talking to me today. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. You're all over the place. And so I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. And we'll have you on again, I hope.
Oh, Paige, thank you for your advocacy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us, Reckoning with Real Estate, and we will see you again next Sunday. Have a good week, everyone.
Ooh, wrecking ball, you still show.